Hi. I'm just gonna leave people in the waiting room unless I know they're on the board.
Okay, that's a great idea.
All right, I'm gonna get set up with my camera in one moment. I think those slides are great. I'm gonna add them.
Yes, okay. I woke up with that in my head this morning, so at 6 a.m. I was all like,
Good morning, ladies.
good morning. I need to test my camera real quick. It's just us, right?
It's
It's
just
just
us.
It's just you. You look great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for all your work on this.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Did Alex tell you? She said we have 85 people registered.
Are you
So
kidding me?
I'm
You
like freaking
guys, that's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't even check in to make sure, like, I was so confident that you guys had this. I didn't even check in to see if you needed me for anything.
We would have let you know.
I know. Well, just, I'll be here. So you just call on me if you need anything. With 85 people, I'm sure there's going to be questions and things, but if you need help just moderating any chat box stuff or whatever, I'll kind of be in paying attention.
Thank you.
I'm looking for there. No, where did they go? You save them and then you never find them again. Okay.
I'm gonna go get my purse pillow lipstick on. I look a little pale.
I was gonna raise it. Maybe I'll raise it. Okay, now. Am I looking at the camera or does it look like I'm looking elsewhere?
It looks like you're looking at the camera.
Okay, good.
It's always hard because when you're speaking, I've started to try to just look into the camera. But you know, when you're looking at somebody talking down there, it's hard to
It is.
paying attention.
Yes, it's hard because like you think you're looking, but then you're not looking, and however the people are seeing you, it may be different than how you're seeing you. I've been learning
The
that
beauty of
through
Zoom. So have you started your new job, Veronica?
Oh my gosh, I have to tell you guys about that.
Ooh.
Not yet. I'm still in the process.
Oh yeah, it's always a process. Meanwhile, Alex and I are like holding on for dear life until the end of our semester in 2 weeks.
Too many papers. Too many.
Oh my God. And because my class is on Wednesday nights and the semester started Thursdays, my last class is next week. Whereas most people ended.
Oh.
And so I made my final paper due on the 16th and grades are due on the 18th. So I'm like,
no.
oh crap. So I'm going to be
my
putting on a large pot of coffee and just focusing.
You're gonna have to. Oh, that hurts my soul. It hurts.
Yeah, it's fine. It'll all work out. I'm not gonna worry.
If anybody can do it, it's you.
Oh, Alex, thanks.
Where is this? Come on. Now it's saying it cannot open it.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for the rotating slides that I made.
Oh.
Well, I mean, Mary gave them to me a long time ago and then I just updated them. But now the updated one won't open.
Do you want to email it to me and see if I can open it?
It's like on my computer. Let's see if it'll even let me attach it. New message.
Achilles. Did you do you know how to pronounce the name?
I tried looking that up.
Achilles.
Achilles is what I think I read.
Achilles.
Yeah. I always just look up pronounce name. I mean, it's not perfect, but okay. Carol's here. I'll let her in just a bit.
If I'll get that and mute myself.
No, guys, stop it. Settle down. Okay, I'm gonna let the some people in. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Carol. Looking forward to hearing you. I got my niece with me today, so we're going to be listening
Aw.
in together.
That's fun. That's great.
We're waiting.
Hi, good morning. Quick question. I want to make sure I don't mispronounce anyone's name. So I have Carol Sewell, Achilles Saron. Okay, thank you. I'm Veronica Perez. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
And we are waiting on Janet. And oh, that's not Janet. That's a different Janet in the chat. Okay. Okay. All right, I'm gonna start letting everybody in. Admit all. Hello, everybody.
Record.
And as Alex is letting everybody in, just a note that when you are admitted into the room, your mute is off. So if you want to mute yourself just to minimize any background noise, we welcome you. Thank you so much.
Ticked down to 3.4%. The jobs market has not cooled as much as policymakers had hoped, and although there were fewer new jobs in April than the average for the first 3 months. This week, the Federal Reserve, which is trying to slow down the economy to fight high inflation, raised it.
We're getting the news report as we wait. Veronica or Alex, if you guys want to make me a co-host, I can help with muting and such if needed.
Hi, everyone. While we're working through and waiting for some speakers, you guys want to put where you're from in the chat. Introduce yourself.
Recording in progress.
Veronica, have you seen Janet yet? Oh, no, I keep seeing there's another Janet. Hello, other Janet.
Not yet. Good morning, everyone. We are so happy that you are sharing your morning with us for such an important topic. Thank you so much. We are just waiting for one more speaker. Thank you for your patience. Alex, we can get started and Janet can jump in once she joins.
Sounds good to me. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CCGG Presents. Today, we're going to be talking about an amazing topic, elder justice, and we have some fantastic speakers. Very thankful for all our speakers for being here, especially since I had to do some rearranging. We appreciate all of you. And as you can see, we have a nice large group for you guys to share your message. And with that, I'll keep admitting people as we go through. I will hand it over to Veronica for the starting of the panel discussion.
Wonderful, thank you. My name is Veronica Perez, and I am a proud member of CCGG, member at large. It's been fantastic to be part of such a great organization who is working very hard to make sure we continue to promote gerontology fields because it's definitely much needed. And we'll talk a little more about that later. But I'd like to welcome our panelists today. Thank you so much for your time and agreeing to participate. We have Carol Sewell from the California Elder Justice Council. We have Jesse Archer from the Ombudsman Program. And we have Achilles Saron from Adult Protective Services. And hopefully a little later, Janet Morris will be able to also join. And she is an attorney. So she's an elder care consultant. So we believe that this panel will be dynamic and will address all the different aspects of elder justice for those living in the community and those living in nursing facilities or board facilities. So thank you so much. And with that, we'll get started with Carol. Carol, can you tell us a little more about you and the work that you're doing with the California Council, please?
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here and I appreciate the invitation. I am the policy director for the California Elder Justice Coalition, and I'm also a project coordinator. We have a federal grant and I'm helping to coordinate the work on that grant to resolve, identify solutions and make recommendations that will resolve systemic problems that make it difficult for elder abuse multidisciplinary teams to resolve cases at the local level. I also teach gerontology at Sac State, and very, very lucky to be able to do that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Jesse, will you tell us a little more about you and the work that you're doing?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So I'm the last minute addition. I'm replacing an Esquire, which really isn't fair to any of you. But what I do is I am a long-term care ombudsman. So I advocate for residents in long-term care facilities in California. So what Adult Protective Services does in the community, I do in facilities. So I field complaints and allegations of abuse, and then I investigate them and attempt to come to a resolution or escalate to the relevant authority.
Thank you. It's very important work. I'm having recently had my own mom in a nursing home facility and frequently visiting. It's great to know that there is an organization working hard to help protect those that are most vulnerable, who sometimes may not have family or local to them. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks.
Achilles, can you please tell us a little more about yourself and the organization that you're working with in terms of supporting elder justice?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Achilles Ron. I'm the Adult Protective Services Program Director for the City and County of San Francisco, and also a board member of the National Adult Protective Services Association, and participate in the Elder Justice Coordinating Council, part of the Master Plan on Aging, or for Aging, I believe, here in California, one of its kind. And Adult Protective Services, you may or may not know, we are a state mandated program, and every one of the 58 counties operates their own programs. So Adult Protective Services workers are county employees. And the state of California develops policies and procedures and training, and counties administer their program. So that's a little bit of some background. And we receive and respond to reports of abuse, neglect, self-neglect, exploitation in non-licensed facilities, meaning not skilled nursing facilities, and no residential care facilities for the elderly. And in some instances, we become involved and collaborate with our partners, the long-term care ombudsman, and many counties have agreements with the ombudsman on when that happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning. Quick, check, Janet, are you on the phone? Or on Zoom, I should say. Janet Morris? Okay, we'll keep moving forward. So this morning, I wanted to share with you some of the data that I was able to retrieve in terms of the number of Adult Protective Services reports that were taken nationally. And it was over 1,300,000 for 2021. So there's definitely a lot of work going on. Out of those that were reported, I believe it was about 40% were screened out because they, for whatever reason, did not meet the criteria. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to speak up, advocate, report when we suspect alleged abuse. And that is the role of then investigating it. Is it really happening? And sometimes it could be just lack of information, lack of education, lack of support. And so this is why today's panel and everything that they're going to share with us will be helpful for those of us already working in the field in gerontology or social work, those of us that are looking to pursue this career. The more you know, the better advocate you will be for those individuals that you will be encountering once you're working out in the community. So I'd like to know, and any one of you can start, why did you choose to work for elder justice? What was your calling? Why did you want to do this type of work? Because as we know, it's not always easy. When you encounter cases of physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sometimes sexual abuse. So these are really hard situations that sometimes we all have to deal with. But there's something about you, something that called you to want to do this type of work as an advocate. Okay, I'll choose somebody. Achilles.
Hi. Well, I think that sometimes it is by chance that you get into the field. That was in my case. I've been doing adult protective services since the turn of the millennium, when the laws in California were expanded to help support adult protective services and receive and respond to reports of abuse. So with new legislation, there was an increased need for staff. And I applied and I wanted to be a social worker, just to work with people. I was not really aware of adult protective services and what they did. But, you know, I interviewed and I began to learn more about it. And then I said, well, I'll try it for a little bit, you know, see how it goes. Because there's other fields in social work, mental health, you name it, children, you know, domestic violence, etc. And I wasn't sure what to expect. And I liked it so much, I never left. So, and I think that later probably you'll ask about ageism and so forth, but I think for most people, you know, the field of older adults with disabilities is not, unless you have had a close connection through, you know, your upbringing or family or relatives. It is something that we are not very aware of or familiar with, other than, you know, what we see in the street, you know, etc. And so probably, you know, a lot of people are not aware of the needs and how rich this field can be and how rewarding it can be, and the complexities, and it can be just so engaging. Also, because you realize the need for protection and the numerous complexities there are in these situations, because you have medical issues, you have maybe cognitive issues, mental health issues, and you have abuse. And it is like an intersectionality of things that one needs to figure a way out and partner with other professionals and really help someone. Takes a lot of thought, a lot of skill, a lot of understanding. And you know, I just found it fascinating, and I love it to this day. So in my case, it was by chance, but I loved it. So I'm still here.
I was on mute. Sorry about that. So thank you for sharing that, because you're correct. You know, it does take a lot of work, and it does take a lot of commitment, and definitely your passion is coming across. Now, Carol, why did you choose to do this type of work?
Well, I have worked in policy for a long time, and I've always been drawn to social justice policy. So, and the work that I do around elder justice is from the policy perspective. I've never worked directly as an APS worker, but I found when I began working on aging policy that this really drew me. I became involved with the California Elder Justice Coalition as a volunteer in 2011. I was working for the California Commission on Aging and working on a broad array of policy issues at the time. And as I learned more and more about this, I became more compelled, and I became the Elder Justice Coalition's principal advocate here in Sacramento. The issues that drive elder abuse to happen and the lack of support in the system really fuel my energy to work on this issue and raise awareness of it, because there are so many shortcomings. So not enough support.
Thank you. Yes, and definitely the work and policy that you're doing is critical, because thanks to the type of work that you do, we have the Elder Justice Act that took place in 2010. So because of the hard work, because of the groundwork that you are out constantly pushing and bringing to light and making sure that the voices are heard, makes the changes that we need happen, the laws to go into effect, the trainings that are needed. And so I remember when they said they were going to be bringing on more APS workers, we were very happy because at one point, if I recall correctly, for every one case that was reported, 5 were not reported. But that has changed. And with that, I'll have one of our first poll questions to see if you have the numbers now.
All right, everybody, I put a poll up. Let's see what our thoughts are.
Thank you. We'll see what that happens. And on the chat box, if you wouldn't mind, please type a 1 if you yourself know someone that has been a victim of elder abuse. And thank you for that. So again, the work that you're doing is very important. Jesse, will you let us know how you got into the ombudsman field?
Yeah. First of all, I would love to chat with Carol more about policy, because working in the field, I have some ideas. After, there's just so little accountability when you do uncover, abuses, say, rampant unreported scabies outbreak in the Alzheimer's facility. And then when that's substantiated, the course of correction is not any sort of fine or punishment aside from, tell us how you're going to do it differently next time. So it's pretty crazy to me, some of the things that bad actors are able to get away with, where they wouldn't be able to get away with those in, say, a kindergarten setting. But I got into it because I guess I've always been a champion of the underdog, and there's nobody more vulnerable and underdog-y than people who are living in nursing homes. I also really enjoy interacting with those people. I've always had an affinity for older adults, and also working with and mediating. I really enjoy those things with the family, between the families, the residents, and the staff there. Yeah, and I also just selfishly, I'm concerned about what's going to happen to me and to my friends when we are older and possibly in a nursing home, and who will be there for us. And it's really nice to be that outsider watchdog that has no affiliation with the facility, who's just simply there to advocate for that resident.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. And you're right. They are, in my opinion, one of the most vulnerable populations. Having been at the nursing home, not all of them have a phone in the room. So it's not as easy to give them a call. And so our experience was, my mom is 87 and she had refused the cell phone forever. She did not want a cell phone. But when she found herself having to go to the nursing home, it was hard to communicate with her. They did have a phone that they would share amongst the different residents, which was good. So they were willing to help her. But if the phone was busy, and say us, the family, that was the only time that we could call, then we missed that opportunity to connect. And so I'm happy to say that my mom, after so much, finally agreed to a cell phone. And so she now has her very first cell phone in her life. And it was helpful to have that connection. And it was helpful to get to know the staff by name. And it was helpful to know what her rights were and what my rights were. But also I couldn't help but notice the level of work the staff has on their hands. And I know that one of the things that this CCGG group had talked about was, what can we do to support the workers so that they can do their job effectively and not be stretched out so thin, which we can get more into that. And yes, Carol, we have questions regarding policy and advocacy and current work that's being done. So we're excited again to have you here. So I'm not sure, Janet, are you on? Janet Morris?
No,
Okay.
we'll check back
All
in
right.
with her.
Okay, great. So thank you. And so let's talk about a policy a little bit, Carol. What is being done right now? What are new things that we should be aware of or keep an eye out for to make sure that we can continue to support the work that you're doing and get more involved?
There's actually a lot going on. And Achilles mentioned being a member of the California Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council. That is a brand new entity that was created through the Master Plan for Aging. That was actually a recommendation of the California Elder Justice Coalition. And that is a body that's parallel to the Federal Elder Justice Coordinating Council. Here in the state, we're trying to bring together all of the state agencies that have any kind of role in elder justice and ensure that their operations mesh, that they're streamlined, that they are working together, and that we're identifying where there are gaps and shortfalls. We actually have 3 working groups right now working on issues around adult protective services, legal services for older adults, and we're tackling the issue of conservatorship because there are lots of misconceptions and problems. There are several bills in the legislature right now, primarily targeting financial abuse. Nothing earth-shattering, but there's always a focus on that, and that is an issue that I'm working on with my my federally funded project called the A-Team. We are looking at banking and problems of coordinating response from APS when there's a case of financial exploitation, trying to get banks to respond more consistently and to share records. And that seems to be a kind of a difficult thing to resolve. Other things that are happening at the federal level, we're trying to get funding for the Elder Justice Act. You may not realize, but there is no federal funding stream, or there's only very recently been a federal funding stream for adult protective services. And there is no structure for adult protective services. We created the first APS liaison position in the state in about 2015, and that is now grown to an office of 5 people, but that didn't exist before. And they're working to coordinate and provide support to the 58 county-run APS agencies. But we need the feds to step up. I mean, right now they've got, I think in the budget proposal, a $15 million allocation for the whole country, which is just ridiculous. Other things that we've worked on that have made an improvement, when I went to work on this issue, the state budget for APS training was $178,000. And that was to train all 58 agencies in the state. That had a federal match, 1-to-1 match. And at the same time, the budget for training child protective service workers was $22 million because there's a structure and there's a flow of funding from the federal government. So we actually were able to increase that. In 2014, we got an extra $3 million that was matched. That was a time-limited allocation. There was a subsequent allocation. And now that funding stream has become permanent from the state. So that's been a huge accomplishment to make training available statewide. But there are still issues that need to be addressed.
Thank you for sharing. And you're right, I didn't know some of those figures that you just shared. And so it's very worrisome considering the number of APS reports that are being submitted. They definitely need more support. I know earlier I mentioned it was over 1,300,000. That was national. Local, I believe I read it was over 200,000. That was just, and those are just the ones that are reported. Because as I mentioned earlier, there's some that are not. And so imagine if they were. I think we would definitely need to have that funding to continue to help support. One of the things I read, and that'll be the next poll question, the perpetrators. Who are the perpetrators for elder abuse? Can we put that question up, Alex?
Absolutely.
You may know this already, but I just wanted to make sure that we continue to be the voice and be the advocate, because I think that with the information that we share in the community, talk about it. It's a topic that I think for many might be hard, especially if, for the families, you're very private. And, a lot of the times a parent is still a parent all their life. And so sometimes they don't want to say anything because they don't want to bring problems to their family or create more tension, or they're afraid to have to leave their home if they say something. So there's so many things that are involved. But I think with the right support, right education, right community resources, which are things that you're all advocating for in the work that you're doing, I think we can make an impact so that number doesn't have to keep growing, so that the families feel support, and so that the seniors in the community, older adults in the community have a different experience. Now, if you could change anything, Jesse, what would you want to see changed in the work that you're doing right now within the Ombudsman program?
I would like to see real penalties on facilities and bad actors who have either systemic problems or are, consistently found to have abused or neglected their residents. That would be my number one. There's no penalties for these facilities. They get away with everything from licensing. Who licenses them?
Okay. Do you know how often, and this is something that now I'm curious about, how often does the licensing department go out to check the facilities?
So anyone can make it a report to licensing. If it's a residential care facility and assisted living, then the licensing in California is CCL, California Community Care Licensing. And then Department of Public Health licenses all the skilled nursing facilities. So I can make a report to them, and then they send someone out to investigate, and they can actually issue fines and citations after substantiating. They rarely do. In fact, one case that I'm dealing with from a couple years ago now, where I found sexual abuse, people strapped to chairs and beds, force-fed to the point of aspiration. All of these things were substantiated, and they're still trying to revoke their license. So they're still caring for individuals. They're fighting the revocation of the license. It's been over 2 years. And so it's shocking to me.
Wow. So for us, how can we support the work that the Ombudsman is doing? What can we do to help? I know I believe there's over 2,000 facilities, nursing home facilities in LA County. Am I correct?
I'm not sure the number. I'm actually in Riverside County now, but I previously worked as an ombudsman in LA County, and the work is just crazy. So, I work 2 days a week, and I have 35 facilities that I cover. So I think that what you could do is spread awareness of the Ombudsman program, because raise your hand if you'd ever heard of it before, because a lot of people haven't, and that includes the people we serve, the residents. Even though our posters required to be in every single facility, very few people know, what a long-term care ombudsman does. We're mandated by the federal government through the Older Americans Act. We are in every state, but very few people know what we do. Ideally, we would have volunteer ombudsmen in every single facility. And so I think, the call for volunteers is really important. It's just difficult because it's like a, 40-hour training program. But yeah, ideally we'd have more volunteers. A lot of the volunteers are elderly themselves. They, generally have had a bad experience with a loved one, or spouse in a nursing home, saw how awful it was and that there was this resource and then became that resource. So I think just spreading awareness and promoting more volunteers.
Thank you, Jesse. And if there's maybe in the chat, if you have the info, or if not, we can maybe look it up and send it later. Where would we sign up for the next volunteer?
Just quickly, the ombudsman program is administered by different organizations depending on your area, your county. So in Los Angeles County, it's Wise and Healthy Aging is the name of the organization. For example, Orange County, Riverside County, that is administered through the Council on Aging, Southern California. So it would be through the organization in your area that you would find out when the next training or volunteer training is.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
As you can hear from our speakers so far, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of advocacy, a lot of different challenges that they're working hard to address. And so they need us, they need our help, they need our advocacy, they need our support. The students that are currently in the gerontology program, this might be the field that you want to get into because there is a need for sure. There was something Carol said earlier about the banking system, and it would be great to have someone from the bank on the panel in the future to hear more about what they're doing on their end, because it's definitely much needed. I know there are some that are very active, and I myself had an experience. I have a lot of seniors in my life, and so I end up doing a lot of different things with them. And so one of the things I had to do is I had to go to the bank for my uncle, who at the moment couldn't go. And so he wrote out a check for me for $1,000. Now, I had never been to this bank. I had never taken out that much money for my uncle. And so they had me at the window for a little while asking me different questions. And then the supervisor came over and started asking me questions. Now, I knew why. And I even thanked them for doing so, because that's how you protect the person. That's how you protect their money. That's how you protect their account. You take that extra step. Now, if I were someone that was maybe committing financial fraud, then I would have been upset. I would have been angry, but I wasn't. And maybe because I had that knowledge of they're trying to protect his money, then I didn't take it personal. So back to the point of giving education and awareness, I think it's so important. So if any of you have a contact in the banking industry, please send to us so that we can invite them, because I think they're an important part of the discussion, considering that financial abuse is really high. I know there's a slide that shows the percentage of the different types of abuse, and financial is one of the ones that are the highest. So thank you for bringing that up. Another agency that we don't have on today, but I think it would be a good follow-up for future presentation, is law enforcement, because they're our partners. They do work in trying to protect and go against trying to combat elder abuse. And so I think it's important for them to also be part of this conversation. The bank that happened was Chase. It was Chase. So, okay. So what advice would you give for those, because we do have some students on right now that are in the gerontology program pursuing their master's, some bachelor's. What advice would you have for them as they're entering into this field? Carol?
Well, from the policy perspective, I think it's valuable to stay broad. There are a lot of, actually, there's no policy area that aging doesn't have an angle to. And elder justice is about more than elder abuse. It's about fair access and parity in funding. It's about equal recognition and equity for all people. And so I think if someone wants to get into policy work, I think get a broad gerontology background, a broad policy background, and then stay open-minded. There are lots of new positions at the state. The governor's master plan has increased the Department of Aging at least double. New programs, new focus areas, lots of energy, and this really corresponds with our growing population and a recognition that we need to pay attention to that. I also think getting that master's degree is critical. I know that for many going into APS, that's essential. You can't work in APS unless you have a master's in social work right now. Unfortunately, master's in gerontology doesn't cut it for many agencies. But really to strengthen that broad understanding of aging issues so that when there's an opportunity to get into a position, you're ready.
Thank you. Jesse?
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, for the students, what advice would you have for the students that might want to consider getting into the ombudsman field?
Into the ombudsman field. Well, you can start by volunteering. You don't need to have a master's to volunteer. You do need a master's to be hired as an ombudsman in LA County. Yeah, that's I guess what I would say is volunteer.
Okay, thank you. And Achilles, what advice would you have for the students that are looking to get into the field?
Yeah, I just like everyone, if you can volunteer for the ombudsman, that is great. I think they need a lot of volunteers. It's grossly underfunded, the ombudsman, and what they are expected to do is so important. So anyone who can volunteer for the ombudsman, that would be a great experience. Educationally, if you're interested in adult protective services, for instance, I would contact your local county department. Usually it is the Department of Social Services or another agency that provides human services or healthcare services, and ask about their qualifications. There's a large variety, and many counties accept applicants without a master's, and then others, they have a hybrid. And some universities, I believe, are beginning to become part of a pilot where there could be some stipend for 1 year of education for a master's degree in social work. And other counties do accept a master's. It could be in counseling or even gerontology. So it is really dependent on the county and what their qualifications are. But usually you could also have an internship with your local county department if you approach them and they have the structure for it. That's another way to get exposed to the field of adult protective services and working with older adults, adults with disabilities. I believe regional centers also offer internships because it is not only about older adults, but adults with disabilities. There is a large portion of people who are in need of protection who are not older adults. They're adults with disabilities. And a lot of the dynamics are similar. So that's another group that we also need to keep in the awareness as we are fighting for elder justice, adults with disabilities, in addition to older adults. So any opportunity that you have for an internship with older adults, adults with disabilities, I think you will at least learn a lot and know what happens, especially during the end stages of life, for example. And if that is not your ultimate interest, all that information will be very helpful to you. But hopefully you will find an interest and join everyone who is providing these services to older adults, adults with disabilities. And especially adult protective services. If you're interested in that, we certainly need more people who really believe in the cause and want to do this work.
I just want
Great.
to, can I just add quickly?
Please.
He makes a really good point. Achilles makes a really good point about interning somewhere you'd like to, and also disability. We have at Cal State Long Beach, we have as part of the gerontology master's program, you can get a certificate in applied disabilities, which will be really helpful. And also further to the internship idea, you could internship with an organization like Disability Rights California. And also I wanted to say you might want to think about interning or working for one of the licensing agencies. So for the state, interning for Department of Public Health or becoming a licensed program analyst, they call it, for CCL, which goes out and investigates these claims of abuse and finds which regulations might be violated. And that will really give you an introduction to the laws and regulations of long-term care facilities.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to ask the audience if they have any specific questions that they'd like to ask at this time. I know Jesse will be having to leave around 10. And so if there is something specific you want to ask, Jesse, please do. And of course, Carol and Achilles.
Carrie raised a hand. Carrie, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, please. I was just curious as to what's being done as far as the legal ramifications for people that are violating these laws that aren't being subject to any kind of penalties. I hate to say it, but it just seems like laws are getting looser and looser these days, and it's really scary. I'm actually a disabled senior, so unfortunately, as I've gotten older and less abled, the world just appears to be, let's say, for lack of a better term, more a little bit more scary. And if we're not holding people accountable, what is it that's keeping them from doing things over again? We've had somebody just in our city alone that was arrested 3 times out of 4 days. And each time he was let out either that night or the next morning and continued to do the crime over and over again. So, and I hear the crimes at nursing homes. I've had friends in nursing homes, and I've also known people that have had a lot of financial abuse from their adult children. So it's just really scary.
You're right, Carrie, it is. From the legal standpoint, I don't really have much information that I can share about that, except that there are legal organizations that can help. But I'll let Achilles and Jesse or Carol, if they have any additional information, and then I will put on the chat box some of the legal organizations.
I will just share quickly that abuse of an elder is a crime, and there are higher penalties, and those crimes can be prosecuted. The issue of abuse in nursing homes is handled differently. It is basically up to the ombudsman to decide and to get the residents' consent to report abuse. That's an issue in California. So unless a resident consents to a report being made, it may not happen. When there is a violation that's reported and it goes up to licensing, that's where the problem occurs. We've had a lot of efforts at the legislature to try and impose higher penalties and get it's not community care licensing, it's the Department of Public Health to actually impose the fines that are warranted, and those are always defeated. What we really need is a advocacy push from the community that says this needs to change. We need to impose higher fines on these people. We need to enforce those fines. They can't get out of them. They can't, whittle them down to nothing. And we also need to ask, to require better staffing and require that they, I'm sorry, nursing homes shouldn't be for profit. They should be providing good care. There's legislation at the Capitol right now at the state Capitol, that would increase pay for care staff to $25 an hour. So they could actually make a living working in one facility and do the job without the stress of knowing they have to go somewhere else and work another job because they can't afford to live. There are just a lot of things that need to change about that system.
I comment as far as nursing homes, and you say that you have to get the residents' approval to report. The resident is in a facility where they're being abused. If they report, I'm sure that they're afraid that there's going to be repercussions and more abuse. So what can you do to protect that individual? I mean, it's like a child in a abusive home. How can we protect them if they aren't taken out or somehow? I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I can understand them fearing.
Is this Carrie speaking?
It is.
Yeah, Carrie, you're right. And the ombudsman is not actually a mandated reporter, which I know is hard to believe, but it's because of this fear of retaliation that that residents may have in a nursing facility. So, I have to get their consent to report out anything they tell me about abusive, neglectful patterns. Rough handling by CNAs is a common one because they fear retaliation. Retaliation, I can't promise them won't happen. It can take many forms. It can be as simple as deciding not to answer their call light. So I have to get consent from them to be able to report out. Someone else, if your loved one is in there or you yourself, want to report, of course, that's going to be reported, but the ombudsman requires consent. And to the larger point, I think that society needs to start caring more about this population in order for real change to happen. Because when, for example, there is an accusation of rough handling by a CNA, and by the way, compassion fatigue is a very real thing. Unfortunately, people go into these caring fields and sometimes, it poisons them and they should really get out of these fields. But when you do have a caregiver who is repeatedly accused, they will be fired by the facility, but they'll simply go down the street and be hired at the next one because there's such a need for this role. It's, as we said, underpaid.
How come you as an ombudsman are not a mandated reporter?
Because of what I just said, because of the consent requirement. If someone tells me that they don't want to report because they fear retaliation or whatever, I can't report for their own safety. So that's the reason the ombudsman is not, I'm not mandated to report that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I can, my role is not to encourage them either to report because I can't be there every day. I'm not there in the middle of the night. They're there alone and it's very scary, or it can be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse, for sharing. I think this is where maybe having access to communication, like for example, in my mom's case, when she agreed because she has to agree. She agreed to the cell phone. We could communicate with her. But I understand what you just shared, Jesse, because those were some of the things that my mom expressed. Thankfully, where she was, from what I could see, and we visited her practically daily, it was okay, but it's never like being at home. But there was also people there that didn't have the visits. So that's where maybe volunteers come into play, because if they see people coming in and out of the facility, they see people checking on the residents that are there, even if they're not the ombudsman, but they're just there to visit. Like, I don't know, I remember when the probate court was asking for volunteers to go say hello, because there's people that don't have anybody. The more activity they see, then I believe them to be more aware and making sure that the people are getting the care they need.
So we have a couple more hands up. Lorenda?
Yeah, I just, first I want to point out that we don't have elder abuse because elder abuse is the outcome of two things, really. It's the outcome of people with mental health issues. If somebody's mentally healthy, they are not going to abuse someone or ignorant of how their actions might be affecting someone. And those two things are all rooted in ageism. You know, there's transference and all of the other things that we learn about as social workers and in gerontology. But bottom line is we don't have any screening process that makes sure that the people in those environments are mentally healthy. But I really am concerned about where the funding backlog is. And Carol, maybe you can give me some insight into where you're hitting the obstacles. I can't imagine if this rate of it's hard for me to imagine that we would be relying on volunteers to enter elementary schools and childcare environments to make sure those children are safe. And I would, from my experience with people with children, childcare and that sort of thing, if those people are not doing something right, they get their license revoked. You have to shut down your childcare. So where is that barrier?
Federal law dictates the configuration of the ombudsman agencies throughout the nation. That is an Older Americans Act program, and it's a volunteer program with in most planning service areas, basically they're kind of, it's contracted out from the Area Agency on Aging network. Usually there's one paid ombudsman and then volunteers. Sometimes there are more, I'm sure, I know in LA they have more, other places, but it's very limited. And there was a huge loss of volunteers during the pandemic, and that hasn't come back. So, and yeah, that's a question. I mean, it's a wonderful program, and it's wonderful that people have, the opportunity to do that, but is that the best way? And that's not how it's run in other states. We're one of just a few states that actually give the ombudsman the jurisdiction to investigate in nursing homes. In other states, it's adult protective services. So
yeah,
it's just
okay.
where we are. And then there's the issue of funding for APS, which also we need more support. We got a lot of money for APS during the pandemic, and now we're gone. It's gone. So,
okay.
Patricia, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I just wanted to comment because so I'm finishing out my master's in gerontology here at Cal State Fullerton, and I was a bit I think I heard when it was mentioned that with your master's in gerontology it doesn't get you further, which is what I had encountered, because initially I wanted to pursue the master's in social work, but because I've always worked with the children, I said, hey, when COVID hit, I literally was introduced to the aging population. So that really intrigued me. And so then I literally changed the population. But when I got into the master's of gerontology, the more I love it. I really enjoy working with the population. But now I'll come to find out that it's not gonna, get me further in career-wise. One is because I'm 50-something years old, and I'm literally competing with the younger generations. And yeah, and so when I heard that was mentioned, so I'm a little bit, I'm kind of contemplating whether I should get my master's in social work, because I've been, because I'm currently doing my inpatient internship at UCI, inpatient hospice. And so I'm having to decide whether I should, pursue a master's in social work or continue on pursuing this and hope that something will pan out. I don't know, but I just wanted to put that out there. And this is somebody who's just feeling kind of like, wow, I mean, like I said, I enjoy working with this population, but career-wise, I don't know where that's going to take me. Yeah.
May I jump in here, Veronica?
Yes. Thank
Patricia,
you.
thank you for bringing that up. I think that in this field, I've been teaching at Cal State Long Beach for 15 years, and I've seen a shift in the job announcements that we're seeing the word gerontologist more, even in the last 15 years. But yes, there are some positions where we have some educating to do, even of the types of organizations that hire both social workers and gerontologists. And I was just having a conversation in the chat box with someone who was asking a similar question. I think it's very important to know your skill set and to know your knowledge set, because you may have to educate folks when you go for those job interviews. And I think that your issue about the ageism and the discrimination that is even present in jobs that serve older adults is a very valid one. And that could be a completely separate and vibrant conversation. There's someone that I would love to connect you with, Sylvia, who's on this Zoom, because she was mentioning on a little side chat that for many positions that don't necessarily advertise for a gerontologist, sometimes when they hear about your skill set and your knowledge set, they will tweak their job description because they start to understand what you can bring to the table. And a lot more job positions are saying, social worker or related degree. And I'm a social worker by training, even though I think I probably characterize myself more as a gerontologist than anything now. But you really have to learn how to describe and educate. I think that's part of the beauty of our field, is that we have the opportunity to educate folks about what it is we do and what we can do. That being said, I would say the only limitation really is that if you are applying for a position where licensure is required, that is the area where, we're not licensed as gerontologists. So that will be, depending on what you want to do. But I would say that's a very thin slice of the pie of all the places in which gerontologists are hired and thrive. Again, we can have a full discussion about that, but in the meantime, I would love to connect with you. And Sylvia, I'm kind of throwing you into that mix as well. And I'm seeing that there are a few others who may be returning students who have similar feelings and fears and concerns. So maybe we can gather a little group together to have some discussion about that. Thank you for bringing that up.
And I just wanted to add, which is something that, because I advocate, and one of the things I brought it up is like, this is a needed, especially when we have the baby boomers and we have these young adults, these intergenerational, that it needs to happen. So how can we then, bridge the gaps of, making it work so that everybody have a little bit piece of pie. So thank you for.
So we'll connect so that we can maybe plan for another discussion, just so that we can keep the focus today on the elder justice piece. But I'm gonna, if you could put your information, your contact information in the chat box, we'll be in touch.
That was very wonderfully said, Maria. I couldn't have done it better myself. Jesse does have to jump off, so thank you, Jess. I think he just jumped off, but in spirit, thank you, Jesse, for being here. I just wanted to see if all the MSGs and all the mags here that want to put a 1 or something in the chat. There's lots of people with a master's in gerontology that were able to find jobs and positions here. So I think you're in great company.
Yes, you are, Patricia. Don't get discouraged. And for everyone on here, don't get discouraged, because that's exactly why we need to do the advocacy in this field. That's exactly why our voices need to be heard, because what we bring to the table, our skill set, our knowledge, will be very helpful in changing and supporting the work that Carol is doing, that Achilles is doing, that Jesse is doing. So we do need the voice of the gerontologist, and don't get discouraged. There are jobs out there that you can apply for and you will get hired for. I am confident of that because I am too in the same situation. And it's like Maria had said earlier, there's a lot of different organizations, and we can connect and talk to you more about that. But that's why we need the elder justice, because like Carol said earlier, it's equity, right? It's equity, it's access, it's financial, it's prevention of elder abuse. And so if we are lucky enough, we will all get to be over 60 one day, and 65 and 70 and 85, and hopefully get to be centenarians. But we need this type of support, and we need this type of work to help us get through, so that we can enjoy quality of life throughout our different stages of life and different years that we get to enjoy. Okay, so I think this has been really good. We have another poll question. Alex, can you please put it up? We touched upon it a little bit ago with the financial, but I think it's so important because if you've been hearing the news, there's a lot of discussion right now about artificial intelligence and how that comes into play and what are the limitations. And the first thing that I thought about was like, oh my gosh, just to add another layer of concern in terms of financial, because all they have to do is record your voice and they can duplicate it. And then if everything is being done via phone, then how does that come into play for finances for someone that's older and trusting others to help handle their affairs? You probably also saw in the news that there was sadly a veteran that had allowed a family member to move in to help, only to find out now that his home is in foreclosure because they hadn't kept up with the mortgage payments. And so I want to share this poll question with you.
Yeah, the financial stuff is terrifying. I mean, even before it was really advanced. I mean, my own grandfather was scammed out of $50,000 through the phone, and we, as a family, I mean, I was very young at the time, but we had no idea what to do, and we just panicked, and there's very little you can do. I know my own grandmother has received call after call after call until eventually we're like, we're getting rid of the landline, it's going, because every call was somebody pretending to be a grandchild asking for money. And it was just so terrifying to her. She wants to help, right? But thankfully, you know, my partner and I are here in the house where we're able to be like, hi, you need money? No, thank you. Goodbye.
Achilles, I have a question about that. In terms of the cases that are reported for financial abuse, what would be helpful to have that would be submitted as proof or evidence if the APS social worker is investigating that type of case? What is the process? How is it handled?
Well, I would say, depending on what county you're in, there may be different multidisciplinary team members coordinating. Often Adult Protective Services will work with law enforcement or public guardian or other experts in the field to figure how to help someone. And if you suspect financial abuse, which is our second largest number of reports in California, followed by self-neglect, it is financial abuse, financial exploitation. The APS program can help not only respond, but find relatives or ways in which we can support the victim of financial exploitation, and the intervention is the most important. So whether between Adult Protective Services, the public guardian, and the police, and working with the bank, a stop to the draining of assets can happen. That is the best case scenario, because that's what's most important, that the older person, the adult with a disability, keeps their money, and helping them find maybe a surrogate decision maker that can help protect the funds, that is reliable through multiple means. And this is where often the field of state planning, even legal aid programs, they receive funding from the Older Americans Act to help older adults with issues related to abuse, including financial abuse, reaching out to your local legal aid, reaching out to APS, and reporting your concerns. You don't have to have a lot of evidence. That's what we're here for. Pretty much anyone in the community, a mandated reporter, if you suspect it, report it. And of course, the more information you have, the more helpful it is. But don't feel like you have to wait until you have enough proof and you're sure that it is happening. So there's, depending on the circumstances, there's many steps that we can take. Some of them are simple, some of them are more complex. And that's another thing that Carol and I and all of those who are part of the Elder Justice Coordinating Council are looking into to improve the structure of the response for intervention. And intervention is really the key, because often these scammers are not within a police jurisdiction. You know, they may be in a different state or a different county or you name it. So it is the intervention that matters the most. What happens afterwards? Well, we'll see, you know, whose jurisdiction is it and what can be done about it. But we're certainly making efforts to improve the intervention process. And but every case is different. So please don't feel discouraged just because you know someone who lost everything they had. It doesn't mean that the other person, there are elements in their system and situation that we could help trigger to help protect their funds and assets. We just have to look into each case at a time and look for possibilities in that case.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us. There are ways that we can help inform and educate our loved ones or the people that we're working with in the community. It's very heartbreaking when someone is being taken advantage of financially. And I think much more so when it's someone that they know, because it's also a betrayal. And I recall a time when I was working for an area agency on aging, and we had a senior come in, very concerned because her credit card, she had received a bill for over $2,000, and she came to us for help. And so as we started researching it, she learned that it was her daughter that had used her credit card without asking her. And that was probably what was most impactful and hurtful for the senior, because the daughter needed it for a good reason. She needed dental work done, and we all know how expensive dental work is. The problem is she didn't inform her mom. She went ahead and used it without letting her know. And so it got a little tricky, because I am a mandated reporter, and so I did have to move forward in reporting. And at that point, it was up to the mom to decide whether to continue or not. But that's where it gets, a little dicey, because it's family, it's your daughter. So thank you for sharing. There is things that we can do, but we also need the person to support. If once the APS social worker goes out to investigate, if the person says no, then it's hard to move forward. Am I correct, Achilles?
Yeah, so because we help adults have civil rights, and they may decide what to pursue or not to pursue, and we have to honor that. However, prosecution and criminal penalties is not the only solution. In fact, it may be not the most immediate way to help someone, and sometimes not even effective. What you need is the intervention. And this is where we need to advocate for legal aid offices, for those who provide services. If the older adult in this case says, I just want to protect my funds and have more control, they can meet with a legal advocate who can help them take the steps to move their funds, protect them, have other mechanisms to help them protect their assets and to ensure that nothing can be spent without their knowledge and consent. So there are many possibilities. So if you have someone who is willing to do something about it, the solution may be just benign and maybe some agreement for paying those money back from the daughter. So a lot of these remedies could be civil remedies, legal remedies, where you can help preserve, the relationships, because nothing is perfect, but it doesn't mean that someone needs to accept the abuse. Something could be abusive, not necessarily criminal, but abusive civilly. And there are remedies for that. So that's what we do. We help the person, if they want our help, connect them with some civil remedies that can help protect and recuperate the loss. Sometimes that is actually possible. And then protect them moving forward, which is what everybody wants.
Great point. Thank you so much for sharing. That is also true. Someone had written on the chat box, since it is often, can be family, spouses that are the perpetrators, would having counseling work. Type in a 1 if you think that would be helpful. Yes, I'm in full agreement, because sometimes I was just sharing with Alex earlier before we launched our call this morning, that just conflict resolution and mediation, because sometimes just the dynamics of the family, you want to be respectful of the older adult, the family wants to be supportive, but yet sometimes the goals are different. And so having a mediator, a conflict resolution specialist works. I always tell my friends, because we're all in that age range where we have older parents now, I'm like, if you want your mom to listen, have a friend talk to her. Like, you cannot be the one to talk to her. It's always better if somebody else talks to her, because of the role reversal. And that just works very well. It's worked well for us, because sometimes it's the dynamic, right? But having a counselor, having a mediation, I think would be so helpful. I remember there used to be a program, if anybody knows if it still exists, where they did have funding for mediation so that they can work with the families that were dealing with really stressful situations in terms of providing caregiving. Does anybody know if it still exists? Maybe that's an area. Oh,
Let's get
Carol?
that back up.
Carol, did
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to say that one of the things that the California Elder Justice Coalition is working on is a concept called restorative justice, which fits what you're talking about. When we become aware of abuse, how can we help that family heal? How can we rebuild the trust? And we're looking at Native American talking circles and different ways to approach that. If anyone's interested, there are a number of webinars on the CEJC website. I'll type that into the chat on restorative justice that are really looking at ways to help resolve things, especially in the era of Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd murder, thinking about, how do we reach out to communities of color, and how does APS respond in a way that doesn't bring in law enforcement and intimidate people and make them not want to call? So these are all parts of the equity conversation we're having right now.
Sounds very, very interesting, and I'm glad they're being had. Restorative justice, I had heard about it through education. but I'm glad to hear in the schools. I'm glad to hear it's also being talked about for our population, because yes, I mean, we need family, we need support, and family is not always family, it could be friends. But even then, you know, we need to make sure that communication stays positive and goal oriented to help achieve the goal, which is to help keep the person safe with the right care needed when needed. Lorinda? I'm sorry, you're still on mute. 1 second.
Sorry. I just wanted to kind of put out there that this kind of abuse, whether it's neglect, physical, or all that, it really has two roots when it's within a family. One of them is ageism. I know better than you, you're older, you're not up with the world, that sort of thing. And then the other one is related to transference and unresolved issues within the family, right? How many, as a geriatric care manager, before I got my degrees, you know, I saw that so much. And so counseling, I think, is really, really important. And also direct methods of presenting to family members, you know, where you can use the ageism piece to kind of give them a way to save face. You know, you've been programmed with this ageism, right? And so if you use the ageism as a way to let them not be wrong, and then also to educate on transference, I think that's the way to approach it, but not to come at it as if, you know, these minor things are not minor, but they're significant, right? But so that they can grow out of it. The other thing I wanted to just mention, and I'll stop, is there's a tendency to like think of this in terms of equity. And when I educate about ageism, the one thing that I really try to get people to understand is this is very different than these injustices happening at younger ages. It's very different. They all carry different burdens, but the thing with older people is we do not, as older people, have the opportunity to recover financially or physically. It's not this, we're not as resilient physiologically or psychologically, and we're much more vulnerable. And so it's very important not to, and this is my own personal opinion, not to use that phrase, well, this happens to people of all ages, because it discounts the impact of what happens to older people, and that it could be a trajectory to death. So sorry.
Thank you, Lorenzo, for sharing and bringing those points up. All valid and something for us to keep in mind, because we are working with a specific population. And you're right, it's not that easy to bounce back sometimes, especially when it's compounded, different things, different losses, all sometimes in a very short time span. And so they might not, you know, be at their best because of so many things happening at the same time. And if it is family involved, well, it's impacting everyone. And so what do we do, or what ideas can we submit for, you know, policy and advocacy to make sure? Wouldn't it be great that if, this is very wishful thinking, but that you went to the doctor's office and there was already an appointment, that they had a social worker there as well, or a gerontologist there as well, that can talk to the family before they leave? Because once they're home, or once they're in the nursing home, they already took that step where they couldn't be cared for in their home any longer. And so wouldn't it be great if we can intervene before it gets to that? Somebody in the chat box indicated that they benefited from caregiver therapy. The question is, would you mind sharing? Was it through an organization? Was it something you sought on your own? Or you don't have to get too detailed, but you know, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Hello, I'm Kimberly Grisham, and I'm a student at CSULB Gerontology Department. Thank you. And I actually reached out myself because I was having a lot of burnt out caring for my mother and my significant other that was dying of cancer. And I went through actually USC Gerontology Department, and they have been very accommodating, very helpful. because I do work for the district and I have Kaiser, but their therapy was very generic to more about your well-being as opposed to being a caregiver. And I just love that they honestly just take into consideration how I feel doing this job every day with my mother and all of the stress that comes along with it. But it's just very important to have a sounding board and just be able to talk to someone, even with my classmates, having that support that people have going through the same things that I have is very important, and it brings a lot of understanding my way, and it helps me, with my everyday life. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciative. Yes, seeking caregiver support, I think, is crucial to making sure that you, the caregiver, stays as healthy as possible, because it is an emotional toll and it is a physical toll. And sometimes, unless you've already done it, you don't realize how much it takes to be a caregiver for someone else. And that's if, the person you're caring for is open to receiving the care, because sometimes they're not ready. They're not ready to start this new phase of their life where they're needing a little more care. And I'm very mindful and respectful of saying that, because, when I used to talk to families, I would have, like, say, the older adult, and then I would have the family caregiver both present. And so I would be asking questions to determine what resources I could refer them to, just generally speaking. And so the older adult would sometimes say, oh, no, I don't need help with that. And then the family that has been doing whatever it is that the older adult is saying they don't need help with, they're saying, yes, we do. Yes, we do. And so just being the bridge for their communication to make sure that they both got the support needed, and also acknowledging that, it's okay to need a little assistance right now, depending on what's going on, or you've done this all your life, and you're going to continue to be as independent as possible, but this will help you stay home, because their biggest fear was leaving home, and with the resources and with support, they can stay home. And so thank you for bringing that to light. And I think this goes back to Achilles. So if you do encounter a family, and generally speaking, I know you're only up north, where the family would benefit from the counseling or the mediation or the therapy, is that something that the APS social workers will do a referral out to?
Yeah, absolutely. So adult protective services in general here in California, our role is to understand the circumstances. What is the harmful situation, and what is fueling or contributing or perpetuating the harmful situation? And often it is just a complex situation where we need to discuss the circumstances with a multidisciplinary team, for instance, where we can get some assistance in what and how to offer some referrals and help to the older adult, to the caregiving system, and also to help them connect. So social work, as many of you know, is about access to systems, access to resources for vulnerable populations. So our primary role is to help advocate, become the voice of the older person, the adult with a disability who is in harm's way, and become the voice with their family, with their caregiving system, with the clinic, with the physician, with whomever can take the steps to help. I mean, and that's part of it. The larger system, there's so many things that need to happen through the master plan on aging or 4-H, etc. Like hospice, for instance, people often want to die at home, but they need support, especially through the later stages. And there's not a system in place to help the caregiver. Pretty much they're left with the emotional burden of dealing with it, providing the assistance and receiving some level of support. And it's very taxing. And there are not many facilities, for instance, that accept people for hospice, for instance, right? So it could be very traumatic. Many older adults are raising grandchildren, and they have partners that have health ailments, or they have health ailments of their own. Many families are raising children and taking care of older adults, and then they have their own lives and health issues and partners. So it becomes this cluster of circumstances where the APS worker primary role is to help understand what are the possibilities, where they need support and resources to help manage the traumatic and often huge responsibility that they have to assist someone and the emotions involved with it. And so APS is more like the broker of resources, so to speak, and the advocate to help access peace when someone can't find the door, because it's just so much to do and takes a lot of energy that many caregivers don't have, many older adults don't have, or adults with disabilities. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Are there any other questions for the speakers that the audience would like to ask? Okay. Alex, can we do the last poll question, please? Okay. Thank you. I, for some reason, can't see the question, but I think it's already been asked.
It has been asked.
Okay,
But
great.
it doesn't show up for you.
It doesn't show up for me.
Only the launcher can see.
So I in working together with the CCGG committee and wanting to bring this very important topic, we wanted to make sure that by the end of today's presentation, everyone here walked away with new information, whether it is what type of advocacy work is being done right now, what are the needs for the ombudsman, how can we, the community, support future gerontologists, what can we do to get ready to prepare? Where do we report elder abuse? Who do we call? I know that, Carol made a point of it's not just elder abuse when we talk about elder justice, but that is one of the big components to make sure that we help older adults stay safe, but also make sure that they have access and equity. And, more than ever, when you're dealing with your own family and you're seeing the changes and you're out in the community and you're seeing what's missing, it makes you a stronger advocate because now you can see firsthand what you wished you had or what you wished they had. As simple as maybe having a hospital bed that can lower enough so that someone that's really, really short can touch the floor with their own 2 feet and not feel like they're flying. For someone that's tall, you never think about that because it's never an issue. But for someone that's really, really short, it's a huge issue. So things that introduce us to the challenges that we need to continue to fiercely advocate for and support the advocacy, support the training, support the funding. Because if Lorinda said and Carol said, if there's no funding, you can have a wonderful program, idea of a program, but can't execute because there's no funding. So how do we get that funding to the programs that needed to be able to make sure that they can hire the team that they need to hire to be able to do the work that they need to do? I think, our greatest tool is our voice. So we need to call our representatives. We need to write them. We need to get involved. They need to hear more from us. Our students, I know a lot of information nowadays is being relayed through social media. So let's get the grandkids that are doing all these TikTok videos, but it's not only grandkids, there's also, other people. But that's what's getting out there. That's what's getting attention. I saw on the news that a marketing professor had said that if their video went viral, the class didn't have to take a final. And guess what? There was no final because their video went viral. So let's use the tools to our advantage. Anybody else have any closing remarks?
I'm seeing a note in the chat box from Carrie, if it's possible to get contact information for the speakers. And I'm not sure if there's a way that we could do a follow-up email to everybody who signed in. I believe Zoom will allow us to do a follow-up email. So we'll perhaps gather some of the ideas that came out were a tip sheet, contact information. We can pull together there were a lot of great resources being talked about in the chat box. So we can pull all of that together in a summary email and send it out to everybody who attended today.
Yeah, I have everybody's email, so.
Wonderful. Lorinda?
Yeah, I just kind of want to circle back since we've kind of shifted now to the applying for gerontology jobs for just a moment, and just say that CCGG is really moving towards an update on the website, and the board knows it, but everybody else doesn't. And when that update launches, it is going to provide a third-party resource that can educate potential employers. So just watch for that website update. There'll be FAQs about gerontology, more things that you as an individual looking for a job will be able to use as a tool. Put it on your cover letter, put the link to the website on your cover letter, put it on your resume, and then invite that employer to read that and look at that and be educated before you show up. And then they'll know what your advantages are. So that's just motivation for us to get that project moving forward, because we really do have a lot of students that need that support.
It is in process, and we can actually include that document in the follow-up email that we send to this group.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks, Lorinda.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Some of the organizations that are looking to hire individuals with gerontology degrees, they were mentioned earlier. I know the Ombudsman is growing. CDA, California Department of Aging, is growing, and in the hospital settings, health HMOs, health maintenance organizations, MSSP. Look up CalAIM. There's a lot of work being done around CalAIM, and so there's a lot of case management and need with the background in gerontology. And so please don't be discouraged. I know, reach out to your professors. They have a lot of students that have gone on and graduated and are working in the field already. And so they're a great connection to have. Achilles mentioned earlier, volunteering. If you're worried about not having enough experience, don't wait until you graduate to start building it. Try to squeeze in some volunteer work already. Your local senior centers, the food bank programs. I mean, there's a lot of food insecurity as well. So we have a lot of older adults that come to the food banks. So there is a need. So please don't get discouraged. And we're ending a little bit earlier than anticipated, but that's just because you were so good and had all your questions out and the information delivered. Yes, Alex?
So I do have one final question. I'm curious, what is the best part of your job, what you do?
I guess I can answer for myself. And by the way, I graduated from Cal State Long Beach and master's in social work in 2004. So loved it, and my master's thesis was on financial abuse and undue influence. So it's been a great journey. So I've used my skills to help the system that I oversee improve, and that is what I like the most. I believe in standardization and helping. If talking about equity, if we can standardize the process, then we're going to be delivering equal services to constituents, to people who rely on us for assistance. and being effective with everyone who might be a victim of abuse, neglect, self-neglect, exploitation to receive the same level of service is important to us. And that's what I enjoy the most, trying to figure that out and building resources in the community at the state level with great partners like Carol and many others who believe in the cause, and really putting our heads together to build a bigger system and structure that can actually work for those who need it consistently, not by chance once in a while, but consistently. And that journey is what I enjoy the most, and the people that I meet along the way.
Great. Thank you for sharing with us. Very
I'll add
rewarding.
quickly that for me, it's getting to work with people like Achilles and amazing people who are doing the work on the ground and finding out how I can help them and support them and help build the system that they work in so that it's stronger. I work with incredible people who are heroes every day, and it's an honor to be affiliated with them and to be part of that work. So that for me, that's what's important.
Carrie, did you have a question?
I did. I was wondering if someone could direct me in where I could go to possibly get information, like one, under what insurance qualifies for certain assistance, and where would I go to even get that assistance? Things like maybe helping disabled elder with some housekeeping or cooking. I have a friend who's visually impaired and she could really use that. Unfortunately, she's had some experiences with people that she did know that kind of took advantage. So I was just wondering if anybody could direct me. I too went to Cal State Long Beach. I got my undergrad there. I was also part of the Gerontology National Honor Society. And I know that when I was part of that society, that sometimes people would do internships or take jobs where so they could get the experience to possibly go and help people with these things. And I'm just wondering if Cal State Long Beach has anything like that, or if there is any place that does, whether it be paid or not, because I'd really like to be able to help her out if possible. So I'd appreciate any assistance.
Harry, I knew I recognized your name. Hello, nice to see you on here. We actually do have, this is Long Beach specific, but we have a Center for Successful Aging that has a very comprehensive list of resources. But regardless of where you're located, and I know a few of us actually, I'm seeing all of the things in the chat box, the area agencies on aging are a fabulous resource because not all resources are available in every area. That's where it gets a little tricky. So I always direct folks that are asking, you know, go to the area agency on aging in the location where the older adult is located. Then you can find out what services might be available. Senior centers are also a pretty good resource. They often have information and referral desks, and they know what's happening very locally. And I'm sure others on this call have other suggestions, but you can see lots of stuff going on in the chat box about this.
Okay, great. I'd like to get that. What was did you have a different last name?
I did. It was Claver. I'm back to my name. All right, we'll have this discussion offline. Sorry, everybody.
Thank you.
Like one more suggestion, Carrie, that this may be helpful for others on the line as well. If your friend has a health maintenance organization, HMO, I would call their member services line and find out what other support they might have available. I know some do have light housekeeping support. Not everyone, so it just depends on the benefits that she has. But it's a great number to call and find out what else they might be eligible for in terms of supporting their health.
Thank you so much. It's much appreciated.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our CCGG Presents. If you do want to keep in touch with everybody and see more of these events, please consider becoming a member. I put some benefits in the chat and you can do so on our website. Our website will be changing soon, just so you know. We are upgrading. Yay. But membership is relatively cheap. So if you enjoyed events like this, please consider becoming that member. And I hope everyone has a really amazing day, and we will follow up with some resources and some summary of the chat. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
So much to our
Carol,
speakers.
Gillian.
You guys were
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica and Alex. This was absolutely fantastic. I have a huge to-do list of follow-up things, so we'll have
I
to
know,
powwow.
right?
We'll
The
powwow.
questions.
Thank you,
But
everyone.
I gotta make sure I save the chat before I save chat.
Please
Okay.
do, yes, and maybe send it, because I think we need to put together the follow-up email with all of the different resources and everything. Have
So
a great weekend.
it was so good to see you again, Maria.
You too, Carrie. It's great to see you, and we will keep in touch. We'll definitely put this all together. Thanks
That
for
would
all
be
your
great.
great questions and comments. That was really helpful.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, now where'd the chat go? There it is. All right.
Bye,
So-
Alex. Thank you so much.
Of course.
This was probably my favorite CCGG Presents.
The speakers were so great. Like they're just really, and Jesse, thank goodness, last minute, like
It was a perfect combination of
it
people.
really was. Yeah. And then hopefully Janet's okay. I don't,
Yeah, maybe we could do a follow-up email.
I
just to
think
make
she
sure.
did
Yeah.
email me something. I don't know what's going on with her.
Well, I
But-
think there's definitely interest in a follow-up with the banking,
Right.
law
Maybe-
enforcement, and then maybe attorneys. And so maybe we can invite her back.
That would be really cool. I'm just gonna
Oh,
send
I love
this to you, the meeting chat, and Veronica.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I can this weekend, I do have a little bit of time to start putting together a draft of a follow-up email with all the tips and all the things.
Before
And then
your marathon of paper grading.
Exactly, because they haven't turned it in yet. So we can get that. Yeah, I can get a draft going this weekend, and then you guys can add anything to it, and then we can get it out early next week.
Woo! All right, and then I will add this video to our YouTube channel shortly.
You're amazing. Oh, and we're still recording. So
I know.
bye,
No,
everybody.
I'll edit this out.
Oh, good. All right, Alex, thank you.
All right, bye, Maria.